the adding an additional hour, professional development hour. Um, that could be something that we could look into too. I think we could talk with Stephanie about that to see those might be options. If people are getting, something additional, they may be more likely to send in the survey. So those could be good options.
I also noticed that Paula had talked about, do we include in our post-PD surveys a question about their planned implementation? Because we have nice response rates from our just regular post-PD surveys. And so that might be a good idea, Paula, to have a question or two about, do you plan on implementing these strategies in your classroom? And also maybe an expectation question of, and again, I don't want to make it too long, but do you expect that these strategies will affect or will positively affect student engagement and or success? Just to get their perceptions of, do you think that this matters? You just attended a session on this, and are you going to try this out? And do you think it's actually going to make a difference for your students? And so that will get at, Jennifer, some of the things about motivation, our attitudes toward implementing new things. And if we're thinking, well, I was sent here by my principal, I had to come, no, that none of this ever makes a difference, I don't even know why I have to come, then we'll be able to gauge that immediately in the post PD and see, are there, in planning our professional development that we offer, do we also plan on content or ways of presenting that change attitudes about this.
Yep, great. Thank you for making that connection. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing this. Thank you, Sherry, as well. I think the more open we are about the challenges and how we get at them, the more thinking we can do together. And I think it applies to everyone's work. So we really appreciate you coming back again and again every time I ask.
No
so let's, yeah, thank you. So let's get into motivation a little bit more deeply. I do appreciate the call out for that. So motivation, just to switch these, just to let you know why we're here and talking about motivation, is our last Fidelity Friday. One of the members of our community said, I can't even get teachers to want to start with me, much less get to Fidelity. And it's true. If you can't deliver the professional development, you certainly wouldn't expect the Fidelity, right? Like, it's just kind of basic or a theory of action or change in there. So we looked at this last time. I think we should look at it every time. If you think about these different elements of Fidelity, adherence, exposure and duration, quality of delivery, program specificity, student engagement, which of these elements of Fidelity is not affected by motivation, do you think? And there's no right answer. I was just curious to see people's thinking on this. John, I currently can't see if there's chat. Will you tell me if there's anything?
Yeah, I haven't seen anything jump in the chat yet, Jennifer, but my own personal thoughts, so then I'll fill the airwaves while people are thinking about it, is the program specificity. Though I think an argument could be made that Fidelity impacts kind of all of it, or excuse me, motivation impacts all of it.
Okay, great. Thank you, John.
I see it as, I looked at, that was the first one that stuck out to me, but then I thought, oh, maybe it's the other way around, like program specificity impacts motivation. So, if it's clearly defined and people are really clear on what it is and the value and all of that, that's going to motivate them to implement it more.
I think that's a great point. I think you're right. Again, there was no right answer. I was just thinking through it and wanted to hear opinions on it. So if you read the newsletter, the SIG Network March newsletter, and or if you were in that, including children with the most significant needs, then you have been thinking about CSAB, which is knowledge, attitude, skills, aspirations, behaviors. Joelle and Killian created this model related to professional learning back in 2008. And she did present to us at SIG Network as a keynote for one of our conferences prior to COVID. So the reason I bring this up yet again is because motivation connects to everything, but I think the areas that we don't get into as often, at least as the SPDIG, as SIG Network, are attitudes and aspirations. And so I think it's something we can pull out, and especially when you're talking about what is happening in schools right now, or whichever sites you're working with, but what's happening right now in terms of attitudes about professional learning, whether they think it's worth their time because their time is limited, it's hard to get subs, et cetera, and that motivation to learn it and do it is what we really want to get at here. So this was from a meta-analysis of studies on professional learning, and they came to the conclusion that effective professional development is focused on instruction, is sustained and continuous rather than short-term and episodic, provides opportunities for teachers to learn from one another inside and outside the school, makes it possible for teachers to influence how and what they learn, and engages teachers in thinking about what they need to know. So which elements do you think most relate to motivation? Element or elements? Again, no true right answer. It's just, wanted to go through the thinking exercise about this.
No, Jennifer, I'm looking at the chat and I don't see any response yet. And I think it's similar to the last question, right? There's no true answer. While people are thinking about it, the ones that jump out to me as thinking through the lens of being a prior teacher is providing opportunities for teachers to learn from one another.
And why do you think that? I mean, if you can expound on a little bit, why do you think that is?
Yeah, I think that just gives agency to the teachers to be able to open up and learn from each other and pick up techniques and learn. To me, it ties into, it's also influence how and what they learn, right? Is if they learn from each other and hear kind of case studies, if you will.
Yeah, good. Excellent. Very helpful.
I think
say,
sorry, Rebecca and then Laura.
Okay. I was just gonna say, I think they all do. And some things are gonna motivate some people more than others, because everybody's different and what motivates them, not completely, but somewhat. I think the thing with focused on instruction, they find that'll be relevant, right? Because that directly is impacting their role in the school. And I think that bringing in influencing how and what they learn, like that, when we look at motivation, human motivation, autonomy, is a huge piece of what motivates people. And so I think having some influence on how and what they learn is also really important. And then of course, thinking about what they need to know, that personal reflection of how does this pertain to me and my students is also highly motivating.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Rebecca. And Laura.
Exactly what Rebecca said, and I'm thinking about just adult learning models and just-in-time kind of learning, and a lot of the research in adult learning theory talks about its difference on as compared to a more pedagogical or children-based learning, where we're just giving information to children, whereas adults, they don't want to just sit and get information. What they want is to solve a problem just right now. And so I think fronting it with problem and then focusing upon how do we solve that problem will increase motivation.
Yeah, and I would argue that kids would like to learn that way too.
Probably, I agree with you, Jennifer.
Yeah.
Jennifer, since you can't see the chat,
Okay.
3 people have jumped in and said B, sustained and continuous.
Oh, okay. I'm guessing that's like you're getting in depth. It's starting to mean something to you. This is not like a um this is not a short-term fad. This is really something you're engaging in. Maybe that's why people are thinking that way.
Jennifer,
Very, yeah.
this is Paula. I just am thinking about this. It's really a complicated, it's a really a challenge.
Mhm.
And to kind of tag along what Laura said, um, I think that often professional development for teachers and administrators is presented in such a way that it is you got to go to this, but there's no reason why, or
Mhm.
there's no framing provided prior to, so that people engage in conversation as to why it's valuable for them to spend their time going through whatever amount of time. In our case, is
Mhm.
30 plus hours, which the research that I've read shows that you need that minimum time. If you're trying to do a paradigm shift,
Mhm.
something like the science of reading or whatever, you
Yeah.
need minimally in order for a person to change their way of thinking. But
Right.
too, that I think that prior to engaging in the professional development, very little time is spent often in providing conversation opportunities about why and why it's
Right.
important.
Right. Yeah, there was a study once and I can never find it now and it drives me crazy. Like I've spent really like hours trying to find this study because there are so few like it or any like it that I found, but they studied what helps prepare teachers to want to engage in professional learning. And they did specific readiness activities and they worked. And so you can see why I want to find the article. But one of the things that I remember is that they had a video talking about what they were going to be learning and why and some of the impacts and showing teachers using it and what that looked like. And that was part of the readiness activities and it really worked. And you can see, you know, that makes sense, right? Like you're kind of taking, instead of someone just talking at you, you're taking a minute, watching the video, kind of like taking it in, like the storytelling of that, and that helping to prepare them, and that it didn't take that long, right? It might have taken a little bit to actually put together the video, but the time with the teachers didn't take that long. But they were much more on board and ready to go once the professional learning actually started. And I'm showing the slide because Paula was hitting on a number of these things, right? She talked about coherence. Where does this all fit in? Why are we doing it? The rationale. Values are certainly part of that. But I also added here, and we talked about choice, and these are some different ways choice can be incorporated. I think too often we just think of like people getting to choose like, oh, I want to go to this training, I want to go to that training, and that's something, but there's choice in determining, and you saw this in the IFI, the Illinois Fidelity Instrument, is there's also choice in, is there an aspect of implementation where I can make it my own? You know, like, so you have to have this 30 minutes of writing activities, but could some of them be responding to prompts on computers? Could some of them be doing this, etc.? I'm just making something up. But I think that that's something that people haven't often thought about as choice. Creating your own goals for the professional learning, like this is what I want to learn in the next 3 weeks. You know, and the coach knows what their goals are and can specifically be observing for that. Tracking their own progress. Like here's where I was before, here's where I am now, and actually charting that out. So these were, and you know, this is not all of the list of things that affect motivation, but I think it's some key things. And then impact and self-efficacy. Some of you probably read Guskey's article. It's a little bit aged right now, but I think it's still, I don't think it's been overtaken by any great professional learning research. So Guskey was saying, sometimes you're not going to get that readiness. Like the readiness I was just talking about, the people who watch the video about the program. sometimes not everyone is going to be on board, and that's actually okay. You can still go ahead, because if you somehow get them to be motivated enough to come along with you, even though they haven't fully bought in, and they start to see the impact of the work, then they're going to buy in at that point in time. So it's kind of like, it's not, and that's one of the reasons, sorry, I'm jumping around, but when you think about the active implementation stages, you're trying to get as many people on board as you can during exploration. And then you're maybe doing some more work during installation. But the initial implementation is when Gusky's saying, like, they might start seeing that impact and then come back around. Does that make sense? Okay. So these are some exploration stage activities, and there's a lot on here. And so I don't want to get into everything. And this is from CSEP. So just one of the things that I haven't brought up so far that may be useful is potential root causes, right? So if they feel like there's a real need for their students that this program will be filling, you can look at, like, so what are the root causes that have caused this need and how will this program fill it? But there's also root causes for why personnel haven't been doing these things prior to this, right? Or why they don't want to engage us. So root cause can be used for a lot of reasons. The initiative inventory is, and John, just so you know, there's a little bit of background noise. I think it's you. So sorry. The initiative inventory, that is going to provide you, it's a great tool. I know Colorado used it to great success, but the initiative inventory tells you everything that's going on in that organization. And then it gives you a sense of the context that your program lives within and helps you create that coherence for them and make some help them make implementation decisions, like about the implementation team, etc. And then communication processes and messages. Arizona, Stacy's on the call, they did a great job communicating what coaching was going to look like throughout the life of the project. If they're engaging, this is the kind of coaching you're going to get. These are the, this is all the steps you'll go through with the coach, etc. There's all kinds of things to communicate, and thinking about having real clear lines of communication and what you're going to explain can help the motivation over time, as well as from the beginning. And I'm gonna leave the last one. So let's look at time. Yeah. So when it comes to motivation, what's throwing you a curveball? So if you look back at this list and some of the other things we've talked about, what do you think is most challenging in your project? Or what's something you're working on and you just want to talk about it? And so we're going to do a little choose your own adventure where you get to choose. I put rational values and coherence all together as a breakout, impact and self-efficacy together as a breakout, choice, exploration stage activities, and opportunities for professional learning participants to learn from each other. So be thinking about what you want to learn and then just choose in the poll, choose which one you want to go into. If you're not able to do breakouts because of wherever you are in the world right now, just go ahead and stay in the main room and we can also chat. And also if anyone has any questions. Are you getting the data you need, John?
I am. We've got 15 of 18 people
Okay.
have voted, so we'll give
Right.
people just a moment more to select.
And by the way, it was kind of tongue in cheek that I chose Tony Robbins. because he's a motivational speaker. And I was like, what could I do with motivation? And I was thinking motivational speaker for some reason, and I thought Tony Robbins. So that's why I chose that. All right, so we've got choice was most popular, and then impact, rationale. And John won't put anyone in a single room alone, so I don't know if that 6%, how many people that represents, but thank you, John.
You are welcome, Jennifer. However, similar to my test run earlier this morning, must be a technical glitch. I'm not able to create the poll or the breakout rooms right away. So I'm going to have to download the results and do it manually. So
Okay.
people, give me
So we're
just
going
a
to keep
moment to do
talking
that.
while you do that because I have more. So, so Learning Forward has a nice article, and I have a resource slide at the end so you can have links to all these things. Transforming resistance to engagement. And they talk about how, and I'm saying teacher, but we know you have different, it could be principals, it could be early interventionists, etc. I'm just going to use teacher for ease. So teachers could be wary about entering into professional learning, willful, or weary. I think I'm guessing we are mainly seeing wariness and weariness lately, but I don't know. Maybe there's willfulness. And they talk about how willful teachers' agency can be really helpful, giving them the capacity to determine and make meaning, kind of what Laura was talking about before. They have a nice article there. And then the idea of transformational learning. So going that whole CASAB, going beyond just, you have this knowledge, you have these skills, but what is transformational learning? And then the responses to resistance. So if they're wary, the response is we can do this together. I'm going to support you until you feel comfortable, right? Like building to that point where they feel comfortable implementing and can start to see that impact. Willfulness is why, is that rationale, the coherence. And then weariness is, maybe there needs to be a new plan for implementation. I do think sometimes that we also works for weariness. I'm going to do it alongside you, so it doesn't have to be all on your shoulders. Yeah. Let's see. And then here's those key resources that you'll have after today. Any questions or thoughts about responses to resistance?
This is Anita. I just wanted to say, actually, when you were talking about wariness, the third row, I think you could do why as well. I mean, I wouldn't answer with that example, but I think you could still think about why it's happening and why in context things could be changed and different. So
yep, absolutely, I agree. Since we have a minute, what was I going to show? Oh yeah. So we didn't talk about equitable implementation frameworks as a whole, but the stages part is under effective implementation. So this means that you already have this innovation that's really well thought out, and then you're ready to actually take it on the road with the stages. The better thought out your innovation is, like the easier it is going to communicate it, so there's real understanding and easier for the buy-in, right? And then the implementation drivers are the things that support people learning the skills and using them, and also the organizational supports. Is everything set up in their environment to actually support its use? The context, implementation teams that support the work, and then improvement cycles. It's not going to start out perfect, so how do you continue to improve? All right. So weariness is the biggest
Sorry,
concern.
Jennifer, I'm still working on it. Give me just a moment.
That's okay. And I think we will do, since there's 8 minutes, we'll just have people excuse themselves at the top of the hour. And thanks for hanging in with us. It was an experiment while Kelsey's on her honeymoon.
Jennifer, I was thinking about those implementation stages, and and the breakout rooms that you chose for us to be part of, and thinking about how connected rational impact and choice are. And when we're planning professional learning at the SEA level, how we need to spend a lot of time on clarity with implementation. And then thinking about Simon Sinek's work with the why. And maybe, spending more time with that instead of just pushing out PD and giving people those connections with what impact really looks like.
Yeah. So John, I hate to do this to you, but I think we should just stay in the main room at this
Oh,
point.
I'm sorry. I
Sorry, that's
almost had
okay.
it, but
You
that's
tried really
okay.
hard. You tried really hard. But yeah, so Stacy, you're making me think of even in my office, I'm sure you would think that everything is always communicated well at the federal level, right? But we received an email at one point that we were all going to do this professional learning, and there was a comprehensive plan for our professional learning, and it was an email that we received on December 18th. Like it was like a Friday afternoon right before the holiday break. No one said anything about it before. No one said anything about it after. It was an email. And it's just, it's always trying to put yourself in the perspective of the professional learner, the person participating in professional learning is like, how are they going to receive this? What are they going to tap into as a result of it? Like trying to put yourself in their shoes, I think is a good idea. Other comments about what we were talking about today? Timing, yes. Yeah, the Friday. Because I was also just living here in DC. If there's a Friday afternoon email, I feel like someone's trying to bury it, right? Like that's usually like when news comes out, like this person is leaving Congress to spend more time with their family. Like it's always like a Friday afternoon so that people don't really notice it.
You know, another thing I was thinking about is with regards to implementation, and I don't know how possible this is, but to find out what have the past PDs been for a district, that, or what's an initiative that they're working on. And as you begin your presentation, tying it to what the district is already doing or has done within the first few years. Oftentimes I'll hear educators just get frustrated right at the very outset because you're presenting them something new that they think is a whole new thing. They jump to that, oh, now we have to do this. So I guess we're not doing what was done last year anymore. Now it's this.
Right. And they
not.
think that you don't know what they've had before, right? Like you don't know anything about their context.
Yeah. And so just to kind of say, no, this is working and helping you to do exactly what the district is focusing upon. And that, that sometimes is helpful.
Yep. Absolutely. Great. Yeah. Yeah, they want to feel understood, right? And heard and seen and all those good things, just like we do in our work. And to feel like someone's coming to talk at us. And we have to do this. Yeah. The part of the HQPD where it's tied to prior knowledge. Yep. So the high quality professional development observation checklist. And there was also like considering, how they connect this to there's some, I think it'd be good. And I was thinking that too today, to look at the HQPD again and think about the things that we were talking about today and where they live in that. Rebecca, were you going to say something?
No, but we've had a lot of success doing. Sometimes we have districts who come in through a different grant pathway and they've already got a priority identified. And so us showing how what we're training them on is connected to the work that they're already invested in has been huge for buy-in.
Good. Excellent.
Yeah, it reminds me of the work we're doing on our coaching observation instrument, where Stephanie has done some really nice crosswalks that are written with like the Danielson model and some other state initiatives, so that when we talk to districts about coaching, we can talk about the high leverage practices and how they're aligned with some of the things that the district is already doing with their either coaching or mentoring programs, and how it aligns with the state initiatives, so that we're not bringing in something completely new. We're supporting in different ways what they're already doing.
I think that's brilliant. I love a crosswalk. I don't know if everyone feels the same way, but it just like helps so much with sense making. You know, it takes away like 10 steps that I would have had to do on my own, like high leverage practices and these evidence-based practices. And here's the connection. That's just,
Yeah.
it was like UDL, high leverage practices, evidence-based practices. When someone did that, I was like, oh, thank you. I really needed that. Yeah. Well, we are wrapping up. Thank you so much, John, for helping to facilitate this. And thank you everyone for being on and being engaged in the conversation. I think, you know, more to come. And oh, that was a slide I forgot to show, is we do have a presenter in April who's going to talk about values and connecting the professional learning to people's values. She's a subject matter expert. So you know, we're excited to bring her in. She used to work on Florida's MTSS RTI, that statewide effort. So that's her background. All right. Well, so great to see you all and have a good weekend. Bye.